Okay. 16. The importance of considering a life project. All people have dreams and desires. However, many times there are obstacles or problems that interrupt our path. It is not always possible to reach the future that we had in mind as children, but we must always try. The key is to set specific goals and objectives, through which it is easier to get results that motivate us to move forward. This is based on considering a life project, a concept that must be understood and practiced from an early age. Both in schools and in the home, it is necessary to talk with minors to make them understand that their future depends on the decisions they make in the present. This understanding will be of great help so that they do not fall into behaviors or situations that put their security and emotional stability at risk, preventing them from developing properly and affecting the possible opportunities that will arise. In the case of youth, it is a stage that involves great changes, where the way of thinking of adolescents often comes into conflict with the adult environment and its rules. They begin to question social conventions and what is considered correct, seeking to imitate stereotypes that appear in the media, or adopting a rebellious attitude against the system. Posing a life project can offer a series of advantages. These include learning to identify the resources we have at our disposal. In this way we will know how to value them properly. Otherwise, many times we will not have the option to recover them, and we will have lost something important that would have helped us achieve an objective that we had in mind. This is the case of students who abandon their studies due to irrelevant long-term interests, and who then regret and must invest more time than necessary. In this way, a life project allows to delimit clear and rational goals, being able to serve as a guide for the behavior. This must be accompanied by strategies that facilitate the organization of priorities, in order to plan each day to get the most out of it. As a result, it will be inevitable that we develop a better analytical capacity, which we can apply in all kinds of situations. Finally, it only remains to say that a life project is comparable to a book we are writing. It will be possible to add new goals and objectives, modifying or discarding any that we consider has lost importance, but always enriching its content to give meaning to our existence and have the motivation to overcome the problems and difficulties that arise. Cat. 17. The quality of life as a priority of each government. There are certain conditions that allow any person to perceive a sense of well-being and satisfaction. This is what is known as quality of life, although it is necessary to understand that it is a concept that implies several levels of generalization, both socially and personally. Thinking about this, in the present essay I will seek to analyze its most important areas from a multidimensional perspective. In the first place, physical well-being must be taken into account, which is a consequence of two fundamental aspects. On the one hand there is health, which depends on the capacity of each government to designate economic resources that allow the construction or maintenance of hospitals. Here also include prevention programs and training of the personnel involved. In many cases this reveals an alarming reality, where economic growth focuses on the accumulation of material and monetary wealth, leaving behind the quality of life that people have. The other aspect is the physical security of each person, which is in constant danger given the increasing crime rate in the world today. This makes it complicated that any citizen can focus on their personal development or on maintaining their family, because they are always exposed to robberies, kidnappings, or even murders. In this way, the state is in need of establishing effective policies to combat crime, either by improving its police force or by enacting more radical laws. Quality of life also implies material well-being, which is defined by the ability to feed oneself correctly, the possibility of obtaining housing, the state of transportation, and working conditions. Taken together, these variables have a negative or positive effect on social welfare, which affects personal relationships and community existence. When these environmental and psychosocial dimensions are taken into account, the concept of quality of life can be analyzed from an emotional point of view. It is here where religious beliefs and the spiritual aspect gain greater value, because all people need a mental stability to feel good. Finally, it only remains to say that the government of each country must prioritize the quality of life of its inhabitants. One way to do this is by taking as an example the realities of other more developed nations, where people live better and are happier. This not only means respecting their rights and freedoms, but it is the only way to access sustainable development as a society. CCC 18. Book Under the Same Star by John Green. Type of essay, argumentative essay. Length, 420 words. Theme, Book Under the Same Star. Although there are innumerable juvenile novels that have been published in recent years, proving that it is still one of the most profitable genres today, there is no doubt that Under the Same Star is one of the most acclaimed by critics. Its author is the American John Green, who had previously published 5 novels of the same style. Likewise, he is well known for his videos on YouTube. This platform has allowed him to publicize his works, but he has also created educational channels and even charity campaigns. The story has as its main character a young woman suffering from cancer. Although at first they were small malignant tumors located in the trachea, they eventually affect their lungs. Thanks to an experimental treatment manages to recover to a certain point, but never stops feeling like a terminal patient. This attitude motivates her to spend her days without doing anything constructive, generating the concern of her mother, who considers her depressed. This is how the protagonist, whose name is Hazel, is forced to enroll in a support group where people of her age meet, who are going through similar illnesses. Here you will meet a boy who catches your attention, because it is charismatic and fun. Together they establish a sweet friendship that little by little will become something more. From the beginning, the argument of Under the Same Star presents us to young people who are beginning to live and who must already deal with death. This is something out of the ordinary in novels of its kind, which tend to focus on romance and cliché situations. The narration is done from Hazel's perspective, and it is agile and ingenious. Here we can see the author's experience in addressing young audiences, using sarcasm and fashion elements to play complex themes. On the other hand, although there are philosophically charged parts that invite reflection, this does not make reading in any way tedious. Its objective is to teach moral values, as well as the meaning of hope when the world seems to conspire against you. It is worth mentioning that the secondary characters complement the plot perfectly, provoking hilarious moments and often desiring. Under the Same Star, it is not only a novel for the youngest, but it can be enjoyed by people of all ages. The message that seeks to convey is that there is no time to lament, but the most important thing is the present and know how to enjoy it to the fullest. CCC 19. Caring for water as a natural resource is a necessity. Type of essay, exhibition essay. Length, 438 words. Theme, water. Water is a fundamental element for the development of life. Humans, animals, and plants could not exist in their absence. It is present in most aspects of our daily routine. It is also essential for the provision of energy, both for industries and large cities. For these reasons, the fact of taking care of water as a natural resource has to become an obligation for everyone. As has always been present in the existence of man, water is seen as an eternal and free resource, which is abused without any qualms. This vision is turning it into a resource in the process of extinction, something that people do not fully understand, and it does not stop to reflect on the implications this could have for their lives and the future of humanity. The figures are alarming. In different parts of the world, almost 3 million people have been registered who live in deplorable conditions of hygiene and sanitation. While every 20 seconds a child dies as a direct result of diseases that are related to the absence of drinking water. Helping them is part of the social responsibility of all nations. Not only would the number of deaths be reduced, but it could also contribute to the protection of the environment, the alleviation of poverty and the promotion of sustainable development. On the other hand, the massification of urban environments and an exponential growth in the need for more resources have inevitably affected the consumption of water as energy. Hydraulic management must be regulated in each sector that makes up life in society. Because like all conflicts can lead to chaos, which would only be the prelude to a crisis of incalculable levels that would involve the whole world. Pollution is another aspect that must be taken into account. Latin America, Asia, and Africa represent the three continents where water pollution has increased the most. Not only is there talk of endangering the lives of thousands of people, but it implies greater inequality, because the populations with the least resources are the most vulnerable. All this is inadmissible, and must become a concern for each individual. Awareness campaigns have to be carried out so that people understand these very serious problems. Water is a natural resource that cannot be missed, but it is only in our hands to do something about it. From a moderate consumption in homes, to actions that oblige governments to take the necessary measures. Its contamination and indiscriminate use should not continue to occur. KAAA. 20. The culture of corruption and its consequences. Type of essay, exhibition essay. Length, 436 words. Topic, corruption. The concept of corruption is not exclusive of any country or society. It is a problem that is part of the culture, infecting different segments of the population, professions, political parties, and state organizations. In the same way, it is not restricted to a single type of practice, involving a set of mechanisms and processes that are made up of very varied elements. All this makes it necessary to study it as a complex phenomenon, instead of defining it using analytical reductionism. Corruption is present in regimes where authoritarianism predominates, but also in democratic systems. However, it is not limited to the public sector, and ends up affecting all those rules, institutions, and customs, which in theory should regulate the economy, social relations, and even daily life. Likewise, it is capable of interfering with the economic stability of any nation, distorting the fundamental processes in decision-making and affecting the programs implemented for development. This results in an increase in investment, which is never proportional to production and infrastructure, given that there is a deviation of resources based on private benefits. On the other hand, corruption has a negative effect on the perception of basic values, which are the pillars of each society. In this way, the liberties and faculties of all people are undermined, especially those that make up the sectors with fewer resources and that have no possibility of compensating for these abuses. Only by understanding the variables exposed above can you have a better understanding of how corruption works, allowing you to find ways to combat it in an effective way. The most important thing is to analyze its origins, from a sociological and ethical perspective, not only making complaints or disqualifying a certain official, but seeking to involve more solid values in educational centers and through the mass media. However, the problem with these measures is that they are usually regulated by an organism that is part of the state, creating a symbiosis vulnerable to the very corruption that is sought to be fought. This institutional atomization ends up generating more obstacles in its prevention and eradication, benefiting the rulers who have a new way of dividing the previously contained incentives. Corruption is at the same time the cause and effect of a government structure that is operating incorrectly. When it infects the culture of a society, people take it as something natural, and do not perceive its consequences in the medium and long term. An alternative to prevent and correct it is represented by the creation of independent agencies that have the capacity to design clear strategies that take into account all their variables in a systematic way.